Hi everyone, just wanted to go over a few items from last week. If you haven't already, an Ed puzzle for week 6 has been posted. I'll give you until the end of the week to get that one done as well. But finally got everyone caught up, got everyone to complete that week 6 quiz, and I did post that yesterday. So please take a look at that when you get a few moments, and I'll enter the grades to that at the end of the week. So week 7, last week we talked a bit about the research type issues related to ethics, so things like the Institutional Review Board, but also just general ethics in research, issues faced in research ethics, falsification of data, those types of things. And then also talked a bit about some of the other types of committees that exist with regard to ethics in the healthcare setting, so things like the ethics committee, etc. So that was our work for last week. Looking forward to taking a look at your final projects. They were obviously due Sunday evening. I'm looking forward to taking a look at those this week. So week 8, obviously that starts today. This is our last week, so we'll be ending on Friday. And this week, we're really just going to kind of wrap it up with a look at ethics, ethical leadership, a discussion of emotional intelligence, because Goldman's emotional intelligence, which I know you've heard about multiple times in the program, but that really is a focus on leading ethically. It's a big part of it. So a good discussion there. We've got a reading for the Forrestal book, but it's scanned and in the classroom. So didn't have an issue with that one when we scanned them a couple months back. Just had an issue with that one. And then for our discussion this week, I want you to look back at that personal ethic that you did way back in, I think, week 1. And has anything that we've done over this past 8 weeks impacted your thoughts with regard to your personal ethic? You know, have we raised awareness of issues, certain issues in the healthcare setting? Has there been anything that we've discussed that strengthened or detracted what you had in your ethic? And then how would that impact your leadership moving forward? If it hasn't impacted your thoughts or your personal ethic at all, then how can the information from that we've learned with regard to ethics relate to your personal ethics? So does it just kind of fortify what you thought was the right thing with regard to your ethics in leadership? So not necessarily your own personal ethic, but as it relates to your work life. So we have the Ed puzzle as well. We have an optional discussion. I have this in all of my classes, but it's if you would like to add something, please do. If not, no worries. But we really use this. I think all 3 of the full-time faculty in the program list these, but we really use it to give some. I don't even know the word, but to give you the opportunity to have a narrative where you can really tell us what you would like to see to improve things, etc. It's just really helpful for us as we move forward. Maybe you want more info on bioethics. Maybe you thought that there were parts, that you wanted more papers and less case studies, etc. So whatever you can tell us in that optional discussion, every time I redo the course, so as I approach next summer, I will go back to this and read through all those comments, and I almost always make changes based on what you guys say works and what doesn't work. So I would appreciate that if you would have the time to do that. You'll obviously also get a survey, anonymous survey, which are great, except we often don't get those back for 6 to 7 months. So sometimes we're starting to work on the class before we actually get those back, and they don't give you a lot of room for narrative to talk about the class either. So don't forget tonight, obviously you may not see this prior to tonight's session, but tonight we'll have our final project presentations, just a short 5-minute presentation of what you did in your final project. And if I'm recalling correctly, a lot of your projects were similar, so it should be interesting to see how that plays out. So hopefully we'll be able to have a good robust discussion about some of the things that you guys researched. And then obviously we have a quiz this week as well. So let's hop over and take a look at the quiz questions from last week. Okay, so let's go over these few quiz questions. I'm sorry, I had a text pop up, so I had to stop and restart here. So IRB, so IRB, Institutional Review Board, they are the folks, and we talked about this in the lecture for last week as well. But they're the folks that review research that involves human subjects. So any types of human subject research, and I think I said this in the video, but something as complex as an investigational new drug trial, down to a survey that I might be doing with you guys as a research project, as opposed to our surveys that we do in class. But if I were to do a survey with you all as a research project, that would also be human. Even if it was anonymous, it would still be human subject research. So the IRB reviews all research that involves human subjects, regardless of funding source. Now, there are specific requirements for your IRB if studies are NIH funded, etc. But all research needs to be reviewed. You just don't need to meet those. They're called federal-wide assurances, and there's a bunch of things that need to be met if your IRB is reviewing funded research, which most are. Typically research is funded. So if, especially large projects, small projects not necessarily, but large projects are funded. So almost every IRB is going to meet the requirements that need to be met. But they do review research outside of that stuff that is funded by the government. You could also have studies that are funded by independent sources. There are charitable organizations out there. Think of like the American Cancer Society. They fund tons of research into cancer and finding a cure for cancer, as do the majority of charitable organizations of that nature. I think of the Ice Bucket Challenge and all the money that was raised for ALS a few years back. That's hopefully turning around and going into research into ALS. So that's not government funding, that's private funding, but it's still funded. So regardless of funding source, IRBs are going to review human subject research. Next question, meeting a patient's spiritual needs, and our answer here has been linked to a faster response to treatment and less likelihood of depression. So there were multiple different answers that folks chose. Obviously, that's the one that is proper, that it's linked to that faster response. And that's really where, from an ethical standpoint, we want to always make sure that we are beneficent in our treatment. And if, helping a patient meet their spiritual needs is going to help them respond more quickly and be less depressed, then that's something that we want to do, regardless of our own personal thoughts on that patient's spiritual needs, their religious background, spiritual background, etc. So that is our answer. I think that some folks chose the fourth one down there, makes the staff feel good, increases morale. That could be the case, but that's not certainly not the best answer to the question. Remember, with a multiple choice question, you're always looking for the best answer. And then is nice if it can be accomplished within the bounds of the organization's policy. That's not really the case. It does actually have an impact on the patient's care. So facilities are going to allow that in some way. Some truly facilitate it by having a chapel in-house, having chaplains come to see patients, providing different types of religious or other spiritual options for patients. So there's a reason that we collect a patient's religious status when they're admitted to a facility. So it's important for facilities to use that information in a way that can help patients respond more quickly to treatment, less likelihood of depression, etc. The most common profession of individuals having membership on an institutional ethics committee is, and remember that IECs, along with IRBs and all these other types of ethics-based committees, are going to be very much interdisciplinary. So you're going to have all kinds of folks, but especially on an ethics committee, you're going to have a lot of physicians because we're making clinical judgments at times. The committee is making clinical judgments, and they really rely on the expertise of those physicians to make appropriate clinical judgments. Like I had said in the video that I did for this chapter, I served on an IEC. I had a hand because the group votes, so everyone has a hand in decision making. However, we made sure that we had the appropriate physicians on our committee, and if they weren't on the committee, we may bring in outside expertise ad hoc on specific cases if we needed it. But because so many clinical decisions or decisions based, that are going to impact clinical care are made in that committee, the bulk of the committee is always going to be physicians because they are the ones that are greatest. They have the greatest impact from the decisions of this committee. So it's important they are well represented. So that's all I've got. I would encourage everyone to, like I said, go back and take a look at that Ed puzzle from last week if you haven't already. It's a little bit lengthy just because I wanted to share some information about some of the questions. I did go off on a bit of an ethical rant, so I apologize for that. Hopefully it will be it'll provide you with some insight. Ethics impacts our lives every day. Everything that we do, we're always making, we're always kind of holding that moral compass in our hand, and making the right choice is important. And we need to think about how things impact ourselves, how things impact others. We do this every day in our personal lives, but we also need to make sure that we're doing that every day in our work life as well, so that we are, we're leading with emotional intelligence. We are appropriately acting and providing solid, uh, ethical leadership overall, not letting our own personal thoughts bias our decision making. There's so much that is important to us being ethical leaders overall. And I think that you can look at kind of the history of leadership, and not just in healthcare, but in politics, in corporate America, and you can see that a lot of people don't act ethically. And ethical decision making is not a high priority for them. So don't be those people. I don't think any of you will be, but always think about, how is what the decision I'm making, how is that going to impact others? What can I do better? You always want to be thinking about those things, and using your own moral compass. I guess the last thing I'll say, and I probably won't do a video this week, although I'll take a look at the material. I don't think I need to do a separate lecture video this week, but the one thing I will say is, make sure that as a leader you are you are comfortable in your situation. So let's say, for example, you go to work for an organization, they are not acting morally and ethically. As a compliance officer, I had this situation one time. I took a position with an organization, went to work there. And thank goodness I was acting as a contractor at the time, because their compliance person was on leave. They didn't end up coming back. They were on a FMLA leave. But so I was doing my compliance consulting firm full time. Went to work for this organization as their full time compliance officer, but as a contractor. And within the first 3 weeks, I didn't get the warm fuzzies about the leadership in the organization, and I had thoughts that there were some things going on that I was not comfortable with, and I ended up having to end that engagement and walk away. They did force me to sign a non-disclosure agreement when I left, so that I wouldn't be a whistleblower. Luckily, someone within the organization later on, probably about 6 months later, did become a whistleblower, because they ended up never refilling the compliance position, and the person that was just over me ended up being in charge of the compliance organization, and she was kind of the ringleader of the problems that were going on. So I guess you feel, as a leader in an organization, or just even as a staff person in an organization, if you feel that there is unethical conduct going on, don't just ignore it. Sometimes I'll use one other quick example. My stepdaughter called my husband and I the other day. She's the director of human resources for not a healthcare organization, but an entertainment organization. She called the other day and said, Dad, I'm concerned. I have, my boss has um, asked me to fill out this paperwork for a mortgage that he's getting, and he wants me to falsify the numbers so that it showed he made more money, so he would be guaranteed to get the mortgage. And she's very young. She's 24 years old, head of HR in an organization, so she's still kind of learning her way, but her moral compass told her that was wrong. So she contacted us and said, what should I do? And, the compliance officer in me was horrified. And I said, you need to tell him that, you cannot falsify that information. You would then be, potentially colluding on fraud. And you can't do that. So, tell him that if he wants it done, someone else is going to have to do it. Or you can provide the appropriate information and move forward. So even something like that, has now tainted her. She's been working at this organization. She's moved up quickly. She's very smart. She makes, a lot of money for someone her age, and now she's looking for another job because she doesn't want to work in an organization that does not have the same moral and ethical, compass as she does. That's kind of my point. Like, make sure that when you are in an organization, don't just assume that inappropriate and unethical conduct is the norm. It shouldn't be. It doesn't have to be, and we need to fight for that to be the case. It's been a pleasure working with everyone. For those that are graduating, best of luck to you. If there's anything we can do for you, please just let us know. We're here, we'll continue to be here to help you as you move further on into your careers. For those of you that aren't graduating quite yet, I'll see you again sometime soon, I'm sure. Everyone, please stay safe, stay healthy, follow the rules. I don't think I need to tell you guys that, but we need to stop this virus in its tracks here at some point. Looking forward to seeing everyone tonight. Thanks.